the life trajectory of mine actually resonates the change of Hong Kong's politics and the erosion of freedom. In 2014, we still had the room for public protest. We still had certain political diversity. In 2016, we still could participate in political debate with the government. There was a room for the political opposition to operate. But eventually, we've come to the end of the political freedom and civil society and the political diversity of Hong Kong in the year 2020, after the big, massive 2019 protest and the introduction of the national security law. That kind of demise of civil society actually took place much earlier in mainland China, and the Chinese government just transplants that political control from mainland China into Hong Kong. So it was actually nothing new for Chinese watchers and people who are concerned with the Chinese human rights violation. But what it means is that China has been shifting its focus from a more reserved, a more benign stakeholder and player on the global stage to a much more belligerent, aggressive one, and want to topple the current world order. What we've seen in the Ukraine war is Russia had been using the energy reliance on Europe to do a lot of attacks and to act basically on impunity in many different levels. So this is something that we have to prepare, because what we are witnessing is a possible invasion into Taiwan, as the Chinese leader has been repeatedly stating, and we must have a lot of deterrence policy in place. And one of them is to start to build up our resilience when there's a need for us to economically dissecting us from them, and building up stimulation plans, preparing for a lot of different response over that scenario. I think this is the hottest issue and the most important issue now, because if we allow a democratic government to be invaded by this totalitarian regime with just purely nonsense in history, as we've seen in Ukraine, then definitely the ability for us to push back and to say that we safeguard democracy is severely hindered, and there are a lot of economic and geopolitical interest of Taiwan.
And our fight against the darkness is so literal. So yes, frankly speaking, it's way comfortable to think about our life in the cities without electricity, water, heating, and we understand that it's a threat. But we also understand that's the only reason Russians do that. It's because of their failure of the front line, and that's probably keep us running. And as Volodymyr and Minister of Energy team is mostly responsible to warm us up and to make sure that the lights are on even under such difficult circumstances, our ministry is mostly focusing in keeping country running. So transport connectivity through the country, through the borders, that the key things we can do to make sure that we are still resistant, we're still strong, and we can continue the fight for our future.
There's clearly a significant sense of urgency coming out of COP about the many different aspects of the climate crisis, whether or not it's mitigation, adaptation. There's a significant focus on what we call a just energy transition, which is really understanding the equity issues associated with the climate crisis, and also how unevenly the climate crisis is hitting the many, many countries that are facing it. One of the things that was particularly on the minds of us from MCC is what I'll call sort of the financial dimension. If you were to line up all the countries in the world and how they're being impacted by climate, money is going to the top part of the list, from the private sector, from the multilateral development banks, from various places, to try to provide investments to spur innovation to deal with the different aspects of climate change. It's the bottom part of the list that is not getting the money that it needs to, and in many ways they are the most severely impacted by the many aspects of climate. So one of the things that my agency did, MCC, along with our friends at USAID, was you introduced an endeavor called Climate Finance Plus, where we're going to explore how can we use the resources that we have to try to encourage more private investment to come into the countries that aren't getting the financing resources that they need. So I think that one of the key takeaways from this COP was it's all about finance. So we will do our part as MCC, working with USAID, to focus on the finance piece.